Recently, I've been feeling a slight discontent with my photography because I think I'm not spending enough time doing it, at least not as much as I'd like to, and that is where I see the reason for me not being so satisfied with the subjects I've been shooting. I haven't had the time to deeply reflect what exactly it is I'm not content with, however I thought a challenge could be a good change of things to push me to shoot things I otherwise wouldn't shoot. A year or two ago, I did two 30-day photography challenges, one in which I simply decided to shoot at least one photograph a day, and the next was a themed photography challenge with one theme to shoot for each day. They both helped me in changing things up and experimenting a bit more, therefore I got the idea to do it again, but yet again a little differently. Since the last two challenges, I've learned to shoot on film, and as you probably know, I mostly shoot film in colour. So, to push me out of my photographic comfort zone, I decided that this challenge is going to be a 30-day film photography challenge with a roll of black and white Agfa APX 100 film. For this challenge, I loaded the film into my Praktica Super TL1000, what a name. I decided to use the Agfa APX 100 mainly because it's one of the two only black and white rolls I had, the other being the ISO 400 version. I chose the 100 version to limit my flexibility, which would hopefully lead to a more intentional approach to the photos I take. Before starting the challenge, I needed to determine the rules for this challenge. Rule number 1. Shoot at least one photograph on the roll of Agfa each day. Rule number 2. If you miss a day, that's not a problem, just shoot 2 photos the next day, but don't let this happen too often. Rule number 3. Once you miss 3 consecutive days of shooting, you have failed the challenge. Rule number 4. Do not use more than one roll of film. In the 30 days of the challenge, the roll of film with 36 frames will allow for 6 extra photographs throughout the challenge. Thus, a second try at a shot is limited to 6 chances. With these rules set up and the camera loaded, I was ready to start the challenge on the 31st of January and continue throughout the month of February. So, to start the challenge, the first shot I wanted to get was a photograph of the bathroom mirror. Reason for this is the light at the top of it. Again and again, I find myself intrigued by it because it has a certain cinematic quality, and so I thought it'd be a good start to the challenge to photograph the bathroom lit by only that one light. Photo number 1 of the 30-day challenge is shot. Here's the photograph. Unfortunately, it didn't really turn out the way I had intended it to turn out. I was actually hoping that this would be much darker, but now when looking at the scene I photographed, I realized that that is quite a difficult task with the white sink. The sink is so bright in the photo for obvious reasons, but somehow while shooting I had a different idea in mind and didn't realize that the sink would be much brighter than I was anticipating. Then, on day 2, I shot my photograph in the morning already. As I was about to eat my breakfast, I was intrigued by the light again and how it reflected off the table and the butter dish. So I decided to document this moment. Here is the photograph. I think this turned out beautifully. It captures exactly what I wanted to capture, the light, but also the feeling of that moment actually. I really like mornings. I'm not the type of guy that energetically jumps out of bed, but still I enjoy mornings a lot because I like the feeling of starting into a new day. I have the entire day now to do whatever it is that I need to do, which for me is a motivating feeling, whereas in the evening I unfortunately often fall into this guilty feeling of not having done enough. So every morning kind of feels like a new chance, and this photograph captures that for me because I mostly eat exactly the same thing every morning, so the stuff on the table is a clear sign for me in the photo that this is my breakfast. Then, on day 3, I was just working on something, and at one point, as I turned around, I decided to get a shot of the other corner in the room. I think I wanted to photograph this because Melly and I had just rearranged that corner to fit her desk there, and the photo was intended to capture this change in our home. The result is fine, it captures what it needs to capture, but I don't think it's particularly special. I think this is the kind of photo that matures over time, because in a few years' time I might look back at this and think back at this period of time in my life and add more meaning to this photo. So what I'm trying to do today is a self-portrait. I've set up the softbox there to get this big key light, and I've also brought my little bicycle torch because I thought I could rig it up there and have some, I don't know, some cool backlight here just shining on my hat, or maybe I'll take my hat off and then have it on my hair or something. Yeah, like that, like a good hair light. I thought that could look somewhat interesting. I'll just do some really amateur rig with some gaffer and somehow stick it up there, and hopefully this will work out and that'll be the photo for today. So this is the current situation. I darkened the room to my left to get the shadow on the left side of my face a bit more darker, and I'm not entirely sure how this backlight kind of thing is working. I actually like when it wraps around my face, like right now. Maybe I should reposition it, but apart from that I think I'm set up, and I'll be taking the photo soon. I wonder, I think I looked at myself in the mirror, not into the camera. I'm not sure what looks better. I hope that works. Something I'm really not sure about is how much of my face will be covered by the camera, because I can't look through the viewfinder and see my position at the same time, so it's more or less just a guess, but that's the photo of the day. Here's the first shot, and the first thing that I noticed immediately was how much of my body was in frame. This is the first ever roll I shot with this camera, so I don't know how much difference there is between the frame I see in the viewfinder and the actual frame that is shot. Turns out the difference seems to be very noticeable. I actually thought the portrait was going to be of my upper body only, with no way of seeing my waist in the photo. Well, turns out there is much more in frame, but that's not an issue here luckily. I think the portrait still works. The lighting actually turned out quite nicely here. I find the technique with the softbox and the bicycle light worked. Maybe you're already noticing by now that this challenge had also unintentionally turned into a study of light. I found myself often taking more time than usual to think about the lighting in the photographs, or like in the previous photos, capture certain lighting situations. This is the second shot. It's only slightly different and I'm unsure which I prefer. I definitely prefer my body position in the first one. It looks more relaxed than this one. However, in the other one I look so serious, whereas here my expression is a bit kinder. On the next day, I found a moment I wanted to document. Emily, the cat, was sitting outside enjoying the sun after a time that felt like a couple weeks of no sun. I found this super cute, firstly because, well, obviously Emily is such a cute creature, and secondly because of this characteristic behavior of hers to appreciate the sun when it comes out after a while. The photograph itself is pretty normal, I suppose. It's a personal documentary of my days, which Emily is a part of, but I assumed this photo would not really connect with anyone else. Then, on day 6, I got another photo of Emily. She was lying comfortably on the carpet, and it was so cute that I decided this was going to be my day 6 photograph. I looked for a composition and asked Melly to hold up my phone's lights from behind Emily to give her a subtle backlight, which turned out to be a fine touch to the lighting in the photo. All in all, I think this might be the cutest photo I have ever taken of Emily. Then, on day 7, I got a bit lazy and got this shot. I hadn't found an opportunity during the day, so I decided to get my shot while we were cooking our supper. We were making some ramen, and I decided to get a shot with some motion blur. I think the shutter speed was set to somewhere around 1/20th of a second, and while pressing the shutter, I did a twisting movement to get this slightly curved motion blur, as you can see. The result worked out, but overall the subject matter is pretty random, and I feel like this was a lazy day. On day 8, I was out with Melly to go to the glass containers where we throw away our glass. On our way back home, I asked her if we could stop by at the hill to get a photo for the challenge. I wanted to get a shot of her running across the grass in the late afternoon sunlight. Here's the first shot. I like how this turned out. I had set the shutter speed quite low again to create some motion blur, which I wanted to add for some movement in the photo, but also a sense of dreaminess. I think it worked out nicely. The abstraction created by the blur makes this photo feel like a fleeting memory or a dream, I find. The lighting assists that effect as of being close to golden hour, which arguably is a dreamy lighting situation. The second shot is basically the same but more extreme. I can't decide which I prefer because I think I prefer the motion blur of the first but the composition of the second. Then, on day 9, I didn't get a photo all day, and so in the evening I looked around in the apartment to find something. I ended up getting this shot of our towels through the mirror that is on our bathroom door. It's okay, but it does feel lazy. On day 10, on the other hand, I did find a moment worth shooting. It was a busy day of working, so I didn't leave the apartment all day. Instead, however, sometime in the afternoon, I spotted a splash of sunshine in our bedroom. It was hitting some of Melly's decoration, which reflected the light in this shiny manner, which intrigued me. The shot is pretty nice, I think. I like it. It's again a documentation of light, and I think it's pretty effective in this case. Then, on day 11, I was on a walk to a nearby grocery store and took the camera with me. On my way back, I loved the way the clouds were forming and got lit from the side by the sun that was about to go down. I got this shot to document it. I think it's okay, not special in any way though. I do, however, appreciate the power pole that rises high and tries to establish itself as the subject in the photograph. On day 12, I missed my shot, so on day 13 I got 2. I was on a walk through the forest with Melly and got one photo of her standing in front of a river and another of this scene here with some hay bales and a cross with some CDs hanging on it. As you can see, I got a huge sun flare in the shot, which in the viewfinder actually looked quite cool, but now it seems a bit random. Then on day 14 I had to revert to another lazy shot due to a lack of time on that day. I again just spotted something remotely interesting during the day and decided to shoot it. On day 13 I missed my shot, and so then came day 14.
I have failed. Again. I don't know why, but I missed yesterday's day. At some point in the day I did think about it, but then I never got to actually do it because I never found the right time to do it, and then in the evening I thought, actually I really need to get to bed now, it's so late, and then in the end I didn't shoot a photo. So to compensate for that, we're gonna go out now and take 2 shots.
So here's the first photo. I like it. I enjoy the scene I was able to find here. I like how the light on the right illuminates the garage strongly, emphasizing that area as the focus of this composition. This establishes the garage as the subject of the photograph, which however doesn't work so well, I find, because the garage itself is not particularly interesting in this photo. I imagine it could work much better if the left side was open, so that we could get a glimpse of what is inside and wonder what else lies there. The way it is now, they're closed, and that's how the photo feels, closed, or a closed case with no further investigation needed. Do you know what I mean? After that, I got my second shot here, where I composed a photograph of a shed right behind the fence here. This is it, and I'm very satisfied with how the exposure turned out. The tones are perfect in my opinion. The subject, on the other hand, is okay. I think as a standalone photograph it's a bit random, but it would work in a series that would give more context to the scene. On day 15, I was eating breakfast and got distracted by the light again. The sun had just come up and was hitting the table from the side, which looked so beautiful. In addition to that, Emily was around at that moment, so I put her onto the table to see what she does. She didn't really do anything in particular, but she added a wonderful element to the photograph, I find, because it becomes clear that she is the subject. Then, on day 16, it was time for some more light studies. I positioned my plant onto the table as the subject and aimed to find some interesting way to light it. I went for a soft light from above and a harsh backlight from my trusty bicycle torch. The result is cool, I think. The photo isn't really my type of thing, but as said, the purpose was to play with the lighting, and I like how it's looking here. The next day was another lazy one, but for once not out of emergency actually, but instead simply because I was intrigued by the morning light again and saw my shadow. As I saw the harsh shadow, I thought this could be a cool photograph of the day. Day 18, I missed, again, so on day 19 I shot 2. It was time again for something a bit more set up and manually lit. I darkened the room and set up a top light again with the intention of photographing my hand to capture the way the soft light falls onto my hand. This is the photo. Sadly, I slightly missed focus. It's quite tricky when shooting film alone, but the main purpose of the photo is still fulfilled. I think my hand is a great demonstration of the play of light and shadow here, and I really like the look of this lighting setup. The second photo was going to be a self-portrait. I didn't have a special idea in any way, I just thought it'd be fun to try a self-portrait with the 50mm and not looking into a mirror. This is the shot. I moved out of focus by mistake again, but I actually like the look of it. Generally, this photo is kind of cool, even though a couple things seem out of place. After that, if I remember correctly, I had some intense and busy days of work, and so I unfortunately forgot to shoot on more than one day. So I guess I've messed up this challenge now, finally, like completely. I'm 4 days behind, I think. Well, no, 3, and today would be the 4th, but I'm now going to take 4 photos at once to make up for this. Although I do acknowledge that I have, for me at least, officially failed this challenge, which does not mean, however, that I will not be continuing. I'm still going to try to complete the rest of the challenge. It's just that I have not been keeping up with this challenge very well, so the last 3 days were a bit of a mess. I was a bit too busy. The challenge now is to find 4 photographs to shoot inside the apartment, because I am not so keen on going out into the dark and the cold. It just doesn't look very inviting, so I think I'll just stay inside and try to find 4 photos. I've got 2 specific ideas already, and one that is not entirely specified but almost done. And then I need to find 1 more, but I think I'll manage. So the first photograph I thought of shooting was something that could be vaguely described as something close to a still life. I wouldn't really consider it a proper still life though, because it just doesn't feel meticulous enough for that. Anyway, I had my light set up again, giving my 3 oranges a soft sideway light. So this is it, and I kind of like it in some aspects and dislike it in others. What I like is, again, the study of light. The way the light wraps around the oranges looks beautiful in my opinion. However, what I'm not enjoying is the overall set. It looks like a poor attempt at a still life. A still life is planned and positioned in great detail, and that's what I often find so intriguing about them. Everything is placed intentionally. However, in this photograph, it's quite visible that it was getting late in the evening, I was getting tired, and therefore not putting in the necessary effort to make this photograph work. The next photograph I shot was of the kitchen with a focus on the espresso machine. I switched on the top lights of the kitchen fan and placed my torch in the left corner to add another light source to the scene. The result is okay, but kind of boring, I find.
Okay, so the exposure, according to the light meter, should be anything between 4 and 8 seconds to get some blur effect, I suppose. I know, it's just an experiment, let's try it out. I didn't really count that properly. I have no idea if that was enough time. I hope so.
This is the result, and sadly it didn't work out at all. Something I didn't consider is how distracting the background is, and my head movement doesn't look at all intentional. So that's a miss, I guess. So those were the 3 photos that I had thought of, so that means 1 more photo to go. I haven't thought of anything yet, but I'll come up with something and then I'm back on track. For my last photograph of the evening, I decided to get another self-portrait with a hint of abstraction, but this time not with motion blur, but instead I wanted to blur half the image by shooting through a glass. This is the result, and I think this worked out wonderfully. I like the structure and the simplicity of the composition, the simple division in the middle. The effect I was hoping to achieve worked out so nicely. This is exactly what I was hoping to get. Half of my face is clear and the other half dissolves into this stretched, blurry shape. So that's it for tonight. I'm back on track, I suppose, and yeah, I hope the next couple of days or the rest of the challenge will not end up like this, and I'll start taking these photos on a daily basis again. Well, guess what happened the next day? I forgot to shoot the photo. This is not working out as planned, but anyway, I decided to get 2 photographs again on day 25. This was around the time I was writing the script for my video on finding style in photography, and for that video I had been analysing the work of Cixin Liu. If you saw the video, you might remember that she loves to use a round mirror, and so inspired by that, I decided to try some photography with the round mirror as a prop myself. Luckily, Melly has one, so I dug one out of the drawer and decided to get my first photo on her desk, where I placed the mirror in the midground and my leafy plant in the foreground. The photograph turned out pretty cool in my opinion. It's a bit busy around the mirror, but then in the mirror itself is my face, which is, as faces naturally are, a very recognizable thing, and so the composition then feels focused on that face, because everything else is a slight mess. I find that the leaves worked well as a foreground element, and I'm glad I brought my hand in on the left to add a more interesting element on that side than the white table. The second photo of the day was the same concept but somewhere else. This is in the kitchen sink, where I filled the sink with some water and some soap to get all the foam. The mirror is just in the middle of the sink and covered in a little bit of foam, which I think looks pretty cool. As you can see in my face, I played around with the lighting again. I had the softbox lighting my face from the side and slightly from behind, plus my torch hitting my hair, which however doesn't seem very apparent in the end result. But all in all, I think this photo is pretty cool. Then the last couple of days I shot a bunch of rather random photos, mostly again just capturing light that I found interesting. This here was for a different reason. I was capturing this moment with my dad when he lost his ski that had slid down into the forest here. My dad went to look for his ski, walking through the forest for 20 minutes, not realizing that the ski was right here. Which I only noticed as I also came down to the forest later, wondering where he is. You can barely see it in the photo, but in the foreground there's a track in the snow that stops at the left side of the tree. That's the ski he was looking for. Then here are 3 photos from another ski day, which pretty much wrapped up the challenge. There was one more shot on the roll, and this is the photograph I got. It was an impulsive snapshot of the sky with the sign of the petrol station while driving past it. So that was my 30-day photography challenge, this time on film and in black and white. I believe this one was the most challenging so far, mainly because the last couple of months have been quite hard for me due to a large amount of work I'm trying to get done at the moment, so I had only a little headspace for this challenge, but I still tried to make the best of it, and the challenge did mostly fulfill its purpose. In the time of this challenge, I shot 36 more photos than I would have if I hadn't done the challenge. While many shots are nothing special in any way, I did get a couple shots that I think are pretty good. But apart from that, what counts is the practice anyway, more than the result. So I think I'll probably be doing another one again one day, but maybe at a lesser busy time so that I don't miss as many days. I hope you enjoyed this documentation of my challenge. Maybe consider trying it yourself if you feel like it. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like, consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and I'll see you again next week. Until then, goodbye.